Greetings, dear AzerNews viewers. Today, we have a special guest joining us from the United States. Is the former US ambassador to Azerbaijan, Mr. Robert Cekuta. Robert Cekuta, we are quite delighted and appreciated to guest you on our interview. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. And first of all, Happy New Year to everyone in Azerbaijan. And I hope your holidays have been good.
Thank you as well. Wish you a great New Year as well. Of course, we kind of had some sort of a tragic happened just a few weeks ago. On December 25th, an Embraer 190 passenger plane belonging to Azerbaijan Airlines en route from Baku to Grozny. Grozny crashed about 3 kilometers from Aktau airport. And of course, tragically, unfortunately, 38 of the passengers have tragically died, and 29 of those are injured. And they are currently on surgeries and etc. And currently, of course, after the tragic incident, actually, Azerbaijan and certain countries have, of course, shared their heartfelt condolences to Baku, and most certainly Russia. President Ilham Aliyev, after the crash, gave a great interview and explained that the current situation and the preliminary report says that it was actually a Russian missile or Russian, let's say, guns hitting the plane. But currently, of course, Russia they actually shared their condolences as well, and they've actually said that they're sorry about the crash. They felt sorry about it, and currently, at the current state, of course, it still is ongoing, and Brazil has completed the decoding of black boxes from Azal, and they are currently in Kazakhstan. I would like to, of course, ask you about how could this actually happen, and how should, like, in terms of diplomacy, most certainly Russia should actually answer to this incident. And just after the Azal crash, we actually seen lots of planes out of nonsense, like the planes from Canada, and of course South Korea had a tragic incident as well. Jeju Air had a crash as well. We've seen lots of European planes having some sort of issue after the Azal crash. How do you connect these within each other? Is there any sort of an issue, like mainstream issue, I would say?
I don't think that there's I don't think that there's an issue, and I don't think the incidences are connected at all. I mean, overall air flight is quite safe these days. But I do think, I think what is probably for your readers, watchers, listeners, that would be of interest here is that there has been a tremendous amount of coverage in the United States of the crash of the Azal plane. There has been great sympathy for the victims, for the families, for Azerbaijan in general. It has been a piece. It has been a something that has gotten, basically front page coverage, or high coverage in the Post, the Journal, New York Times, etc. And also what has gotten a lot of coverage are President Aliyev's statements and his reactions. And I think there's a great deal of sympathy in the United States for Azerbaijani. I have to say, personally, having flown Azal quite a few times, what has really sort of hit me are two things. One is great sympathy and sorrow for the victims, sort of imagining what it was like. We've seen the pictures and so forth. It's terrifying. And, very much sort of sympathy for the families, for the, for their friends, everyone, and frankly, all of Azerbaijan, because I think it's been a very general thing. Just people feeling affected by it, and I can feel that. Great sympathy for that, and I want to sort of express that. But I also want to note something else, and that is the tremendous professionalism and skill of the Azal crew, and the presence of mind that they must have had to do what they did is really awe-inspiring. It's heroic. And I think that that's something that Azerbaijanis can be proud of, Azal can be proud of, because it could have been a much, 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 much worse disaster, except for the skill and the professionalism and the just presence of mind, the thinking, the planning, the selflessness of that crew. So I think that's something that has come across as well. And I think that's something, to sort of think about in all of this as well.
Well, thank you so much for your sorrow and the condolences. It's of course quite great to hear that, as you said, it was some sort of I would say, every sort of European countries and like North America had shared the issue, had shared the sorrow with us. That's really heartfelt thing to hear about it. And of course, we as AzerNews also sharing our condolences, like the current wildfires happening in LA, and it sure is a difficult time. It sure is a bad. Now, I would like to drift away from this tragic events and come back to our main issues, and of course, which is the current politics happening since the start of the new year, I would say. As you know, force from Azerbaijan of gunfire directed at Azerbaijani armed positions in the Lachin district by Armenian forces over the past few days. Not only once, but also twice and thrice, I would say. What's behind this sudden uptick in tensions, I would like to ask as a question, and I would like to remind that the Armenian Prime Minister, just a few months ago, I would like to say that he said that the next meeting of delimitation commissions will take place in January. And how do you assess the current situation? Do you think it's really possible to move on towards that?
Well, I think first of all, I mean, any of these instances, any of these returns of fighting, shooting along the border, all of these instances are regrettable. They're unfortunate. They should not be happening. But I think that's the last point is something I want to stress. They should not be happening. And we're in a situation now, Azerbaijan and Armenia are in a situation now where with the talks, with the progress that is being made towards a peace agreement, that agreement can preclude these sorts of instances. And so I think what is really important right now, as painful as these particular instances are, is to also take the steps to preclude them, to prevent them from happening again. And that is finish the negotiations on a peace agreement. In the last couple of years, there's been a lot of effort by the United States, by others, to sort of help the two sides come together. There have been direct talks between President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan, which are definitely the step in the right direction. My understanding is that a lot has been already settled. There are just a few things which are outstanding. Those points which my old friend Dave Carpenter addressed in his meetings recently, President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan, he sort of sketched out a approach that could resolve things and frankly also help improve the relationship between U.S. and Azerbaijan, which I think is important. There are steps we can be taking. But it really is critical to finalize the peace agreement. Now, I want to say something else on that front. As in any transaction, everything is not going to be perfect now. But by getting a strong peace agreement written, signed, in place, accepted by both sides, you establish the basis for further discussions and for building up a good relationship between Azerbaijanis and Armenians again. And
Indeed.
I think one thing which I'm scared of is that sometimes there's this thought, oh, if we just hold out a little bit longer, we'll get something better. It's human nature. On a very basic level, it's just when we, go to the bazaar. Negotiations, in a sense, are like being in the bazaar, but on a very different, level. But there's also a danger that the deal could simply evaporate. And I look at a number of other instances around the world where people held out for that better deal. We just hang on a little bit longer. We can get something else. We can wring some extra concession. They got nothing. And in the end, the people ended up suffering. And I think we can both think of examples of that, where if only they had taken this deal, which got them 98.7610% of their of what they needed, and then could build on that last bit a little bit later using other negotiations, keeping that process going forward, they would have avoided a much more awful situation. You know, and that's what I'm scared of. That by, you know, things are basically in place. I know the Azerbaijani leadership is looking for an agreement. The Armenian leadership seems to be looking for an agreement. The Armenian people, the Azerbaijani people are kind of hoping for an agreement. Let's get this done. And I don't know, you know, I think the Biden administration actually did a good job on trying to help the Azerbaijanis and the Armenians, much more frankly than many previous administrations. But I think that's really, you know, take this, you know, too many things can get lost, you know, if we don't go with, you know, a strong deal right now.
Just on one notice, I will actually add an additional question to your saying that, as you actually mentioned about the US being involved in the peace agreement, but of course we all know that we have almost a week remaining for Donald Trump's inauguration for his second term as a United States president. So obviously touching on Azerbaijan's relationships with the United States in his interview with local television channels, Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev expressed and hoped that the elected President Trump would correct the harmful pro-Armenian course of predecessor Biden administration and President Biden, of course. And just a little question about your tenure as an ambassador as well, because you actually had a great privilege to be an ambassador, not only one, but also two presidents at a time. Of course, one of them is Barack Obama, and the second one is, of course, the President-elect Donald Trump. And I would like to ask your experience during your tenure, and how do you rate Donald Trump's role in Azerbaijan-Armenia peace resolution process, like consideration that Donald Trump has always been some sort of a person, some sort of politician with protectionist behavior, political stance, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I think it's very hard to predict what President-elect Trump will do in his second term. Bill, as you noted, you know, based on what he was doing in his first term with the region, I know that John Bolton, as National Security Advisor, took a great interest and tried to sort of move some things ahead. When he left, that interest sort of faded. And tragically, I think, in 2020, there were some statements out of the White House, but not real action. That the Deputy Secretary of State, Steve Biegun, really tried, but he didn't have what we would call the top cover, the real sort of real interest. You know, it was during the elections here and so forth. But still, as President of the United States, you got to do a lot of things at the same time, or be able to sort of, you know, bring to bear things at the same time. And I would argue that, frankly, we did not do at that time what we should have been doing to help the countries in engagement in the region. Now, I think one of the things that has been discussed here in foreign policy circles is how the world has changed since Trump left office in January 2021. And we're looking at the statements that, you know, what Trump is talking about now in terms of what he's interested in. A lot of this is a great deal of focus on the Western Hemisphere, on relations with our neighbors, other questions that he has sort of raised. You know, it's created a lot of speculation and heat in the press. I'm not sure how far they'll go, but these are things which he is talking about as being interested in. He's also got to focus on China. There's the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which is a serious global issue. There is the connection between Russia and North Korea, for Pete's sakes, plus Iran. They brought into into Ukraine. But so you have these issues on the plate. Other things which are coming at him, whether the president likes it or not. One of the problems being president is you don't necessarily get to set your agenda. The world kind of sets it for you. But there are the changes in the Middle East, and there's exceedingly difficult situation there, which the president has experience on with the Abraham Accords, but is something that he's going to be dealing with a different situation than he had when he left office in the last time. Plus, there are other issues that are going to hit him, whether he likes it or not, and one of those is AI, the whole system, the changes in terms of technology of augmented artificial intelligence, what that's doing in terms of our systems, in terms of our security, in terms of our defense, in terms of our energy picture, climate change. The president does not like the Paris Accords and will probably pull out again, but the rest of the world will keep on going with it. So we'll have to deal with it. So I list these things in the sense that I'm not sure how much attention, I worked to get attention the last time around, but I'm not sure how much attention the president will actually bring to bear on Azerbaijan-Armenia or even the South Caucasus. As much as I think it is a critical part of the world, it's a critical piece of the global equation. And in dealing with other questions, you need to be looking at this. So I think, again, Azerbaijan and Armenia made a lot of progress in their own relationships with each other. They need to keep working on that. I would hope that the United States will take, a positive role. President Aliyev and other world leaders dealt with President Trump the last time around. They kind of they know in a sense how he works and how to work with him. They're experienced, and but I think in terms of what Trump is talking about now in terms of interests, and that's just on the foreign policy side. Domestically, it's this focus on rebuilding American manufacturing, the whole supply chain questions and the critical minerals and all of these things. Again, they're going to take up a lot of space, and so I would hope that there would be positive efforts on the part of the White House and the administration. But I would say at this point, it's hard to try to guess how much of that will actually happen. And I think if I were, a leader in that part in the South Caucasus, I would be looking at, various options and various ways of trying to play with how things might develop.
Thank you so much. As an addition, I would like to ask another question. Maybe it might actually sound quite unethical to ask a diplomat, but would you actually expect some sort of a radical shift in terms of U.S. policy? Because we have U.S. foreign policy, of course, because we rarely see any sort of shifts in terms of U.S. foreign policy. Of course, there are certain little minor changes, but U.S. foreign policy always stays, I would say, almost the same. But would you seek or maybe think that anything, some sort of maybe abolishing United Nations, so let's say, would you actually think like something like that?
Well, I mean, part of part of this is, as you say something radical, abolishing the United Nations. Well, the U.S. could pull out conceivably, but there's 100, and I think we're 198. But there are a number of countries that actually aren't in the U.S. So I always round it off like 200-ish. So we pull out, and 199 or 197 are still there. I think this is something, frankly, this is, I'm private sector now, so I can say things I couldn't say as ambassador when I was, on the government payroll. But I think it's widely expected that President Trump will pull out of the Paris Accords on climate. And if he does, okay, that's an American position, and that's his, he's elected, and that's his prerogative, that's his role. But the rest of the world is going to still be in those. And frankly, states and others are going to be playing a different kind of role. So there's a reason why there's a certain consistency. But part of it is, the international system is like any system. There's a lot that kind of has just been built up over the years. That being said, I think it's also a time when there are some serious changes afoot, underway in the international system. A lot of what we've taken for granted can no longer be taken for granted, is not being taken for granted. The idea of countries using force against each other is one which is gaining a certain currency, is not, I don't want to say accepted, but there are some people who think, oh, why not? Well, then you find out, well, there was a reason why not. And Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a good example of that. But, we're also seeing some longstanding trends are still there in terms of things. But the changing role of China is something that has to be taken into account and engaged on. I don't say dealt with. That sounds like you just kind of left the problem just sort of put aside. No, it's not. China's a major power. It has a role to play. Russia's a major power. It has a role to play. The U.S., UK, France, India, Turkey, Brazil, Mexico. All these countries have roles to play. And we had this, I think, idea at certain points that, oh, well, we're all just going to kind of get along. Well, again, foreign relations are human relations, and it's in your family, everything's fine until, why did Uncle so-and-so do that? And your mother goes, what did you just do? This kind of international relations in a weird way. And so we have to be taking into account that the world continues to change, that we need to take changes with it. But at the same time, you're right, a lot is sort of basic and going to be there. And frankly, you kind of want it there. You kind of want a basic understanding of how to deal with each other. And that's, in some senses, what we need to be doing now, is looking at how we reinforce how we deal with each other. There are going to be difficulties. There are going to be disagreements. It's human nature. But how to deal with them is one of the things that's really important in diplomacy and international relations. And that's something I think, with Senator Rubio being, asked to be the Secretary of State, Mike Waltz, who has, he's former military, but has a lot of interest in international security relations. There are some people coming in who've got some good experience on these things. And so one of the problems, I think, and I say this with due respect to the press, but sometimes I think the press takes the easy way out and just reports, Trump said this. But there's a lot of other things kind of going on too. And I think leaders understand that. And that's why I come back to that point. President Aliyev, and other leaders have experience in dealing with this. And they sort of know the game themselves.
And of course, let's see what's going to happen from the upcoming, this year, let's say.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Ambassador. It's an honor to have you as an interviewer and as a participant. It was a great interview, I would say. Thank you so much for your comprehensive insights.
Well, thank you very much. I'm pleased to talk to you, and hope to get back to Azerbaijan not in the not too distant future. So take care, and everybody be good. I hope everybody's well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.